Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. I'm sure innocents have been killed, and it's the price of waging a war. I think we should be incredibly careful. I think not we, the Israelis should be incredibly careful to be sure that they're focusing on going after the folks that are propagating this war against Israel. And it's against their interest when that doesn't happen. But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
Yes, folks, there is Genocide Joe there with one of the most vile things he said in his first term in office here. He doesn't know if he can trust the death totals we are seeing, which where they stand now is about half the civilian casualties in about 2.5 weeks as Russia's invasion of Ukraine. About 5,000 plus, who knows, give or take, some people stuck under rubble. Some people may be overly estimated by Palestinian authorities, but I will say that the good old Washington Post, which I think Joe Biden has heard of, did put this out on the 24th, and I'll scroll to this paragraph. Everyone uses figures from the Gaza Health Ministry because those are generally proven to be reliable, said Omar Shakir, Israel and Palestine director at Human Rights Watch. In the times in which we have done our own verification of numbers for particular strikes, I'm not aware of any time which there has been some major discrepancy. So what is different? It's not the track record. It is the PR imperatives for the continued slaughter of Palestinian civilians.
Extremely gross and dehumanizing. And I just add really briefly, Matt, that what's the point in doing all this? It's literally so that media organizations from now on, whenever they write about the death tolls that are being reported from the Gaza Health Ministry, they say the Hamas-run health ministry to try to discredit those numbers. I mean, the fact that Joe Biden is supporting these bombings and mass slaughtering of civilians and human beings in Gaza is disgusting enough, right? I think that's the most disgusting thing. But in terms of statements, I mean, this is as heinous as it gets. And I know every time we've talked about this, we've mentioned the fact that there's something so hard about us reporting on it, but even just sort of living in the world right now. We all know why they do it. We know how, the mechanism, all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't make you feel really crazy when you see people like Biden and our government just regularly lying in the way that they are about what is very visible and clear for all to see.
It's legit sickening. Jules T points out, the numbers far exceed 5K. Yeah, they're going up fast. That the long-term effects of the siege, have already started kicking in, but are only going to take more and more lives from here on out.
No, I was just going to say, as we're going to talk about with Davison in just a little bit, the fact that these hospitals are being shut down, are unable to take care of people they don't have electricity and things that they need. It means that there are going to be significant deaths of people who need basic treatments, people on dialysis, people who need certain kind of medicines to survive. And I know I don't need to tell it to this audience, but sometimes I feel like Americans need to be reminded of this. All of the health requirements that go into keeping us alive, right? Things like dialysis, things like insulin exist in Gaza too. And when you basically prevent people from having access to that, they die. So that is an added, death toll to this. And again, it's intentional. When you hear things like the IDF chiding the United Nations saying, "Oh, you guys should get some fuel from Hamas. We're no longer going to let you do humanitarian work in Gaza." Understand that is saying, "Hey, we want those numbers to go up, 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 up about how many people are dying in Gaza." It's some of the most evil, brutal stuff that you'll see.
I think, and I'm not the only one, there's a genocide expert in Jewish currents arguing that what we're seeing is a textbook genocide. That's what we're seeing right now. But also just to point out that, it's not just Israel, but also America that has a lot of culpability here. There was this funny a tweet by UAE Exotic Falconry and Finance, which is a sort of parody political Twitter account. I don't really know exactly how to explain the bit, I'll be honest, but they occasionally post really funny things like this. And he was quoting Obama. He did a thread. The story of this, and I remember this when I first started at Majority Report. This is one of the early stories, or this was an active story around this time. And we go to Kunduz, October 3rd, 2015. And here, Médecins Sans Frontières, that means Doctors Without Borders in French. October 2015, October 3rd, 2015, U.S. airstrikes destroyed our trauma hospital in Kunduz, Afghanistan, killing 42 people. I will let one of the doctors there fill us in the immediate aftermath of this.
In Kunduz, our patients burned in their beds. Our doctors, nurses, and other staff were killed as they worked. Our colleagues had to operate on each other. One of our doctors died on an improvised operating table, an office desk, while his colleagues tried to save his life. Today we pay tribute to those who died in this abhorrent attack, and we pay tribute to those Doctors Without Borders staff who, while watching their colleagues die and with their hospital still on fire, carried on treating the wounded. This was not just an attack on our hospital, it was an attack on the Geneva Conventions. This cannot be tolerated. These conventions govern the rules of war and were established to protect civilians in conflict, including patients, medical workers, and facilities. It is precisely because attacking hospitals in war zones is prohibited that we expect it to be protected. And yet 10 patients, including 3 children, and 12 of our staff were killed in the aerial raids. The facts and circumstances of this attack must be investigated independently and impartially, particularly given the inconsistencies in the U.S. and Afghan accounts of what happened over recent days. We cannot rely only on internal military investigations by the U.S., NATO, and Afghan forces. Today we've announced that we're seeking an investigation into the Kunduz attack by the International Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission. We are calling on President Obama to consent to the fact-finding commission. Doing so will send a powerful signal of the U.S. government's commitment to and respect for international humanitarian law and the rules of war. This is not only about the deaths of our staff and patients in Kunduz, it is about the safety and security of our medical teams around the world working in conflict zones. It is about our patients in Afghanistan, our patients in Yemen, our patients in Ukraine, and our patients in Syria. Today we are fighting back for the respect of the Geneva Conventions. As a medical humanitarian organization, we are fighting back for the sake of our patients. We need you as members of the public to stand with us to insist that even wars have rules.
Now, you may have heard there, if you're listening closely, a pretty explicit and direct call for an independent investigation. Did Obama give him that? No. What we did was let the Pentagon investigate itself. The Pentagon said, a bit of fog of war, a bit of whoopsie, a bit of over enthusiasm from people down the chain of command. We're going to punish them, of course, but up top we are way we don't condone such things. And oh, by the way, we'll do reparations for folks of you who have had people die, and that is in the form of $6,000 if somebody died, about $3,000 if someone was maimed. So buy a Mac Pro if you lost your family member. Here is a clip from NPR interview with some of the folks about this.
I want the Americans to clarify why they hit us. What was the reason? We were just there to serve. They bombed us while we were asleep.
Niazi's now too disabled by his injuries to work. He says so far he's received no compensation from the US, nor have the families of the doctors, patients and caretakers killed in the hospital bombing, and nor have the many others who were injured. The US military has made what it calls condolence payments. These are one-off payments to express sympathy and meet immediate expenses. Families of the dead were given $6,000. The injured got $3,000. Niazi thinks these condolence sums are derisory.
It's ridiculous assistance. It is ridiculous and insulting.
Jonathan Whittle of Doctors Without Borders, or Médecins Sans Frontières as it's also known, says other victims feel the same way.
The feedback that we've had from families and from people inside the facility has been that it's not sufficient.
So yeah, of course, Israel's not above it. Neither are we. And ultimately, accountability in the form of whoopsie. Even though we didn't give that independent investigation, there's some reporting that maybe even in the plane itself, which just so people can have it in your imaginations, one of these guys. It was one of these AC-130. I saw some rumors that the people in the plane were even wondering aloud, "Is this legal? What we're doing?" Of course, Pentagon independent investigation, and this is what it looked like to bomb a hospital with one of those things. We talked a little bit with Derek Davison after we got off about staring into the abyss. We are not by any means people that have the hardest at this moment, but this shit sucks and it has to stop. And the time to put the foot down is always 2015 was one of those. We should have and we just don't. We have these militaries that are completely lawless and completely scoff at the idea that they'd be accountable about this sort of thing. And this is the world we live in now.
There's so much, about what's going on to focus on, right? And first and foremost, it's saving Palestinian lives, who, as we're speaking right now, are still directly under threat. More bombing, of a land war, and of this attempt to eradicate that people. And yes, you know what? Like, yes, these are the words you use in this situation, because even before this attack on Gaza, Israel and their courts have been attempting to deny the historical existence of Palestinians. When we had Basil Aldra on the program to talk about what's happening um, in the West Bank, we were talking about these attempts but that are used by the Israeli judicial system, right? Judges making arguments that Palestinians, oh yeah, they didn't really live in this land, they didn't really exist, right? So it's erasing people in history with the goal of trying to erase them in the present, right? These are real attempts to eradicate and push out a group of people, and we have to start from there. Then there's the American role in this. America has played a massive role in condoning and allowing this to happen, as we've seen all across the globe has played a major role in these horrors. And then you see in this country the way that people talk about it, and at a certain point, you can get frustrated people in your personal life, right? Very justified to do so. But you look at the way that the United States Congress is acting right now, where a ceasefire is something that's out of bounds. You have that bumbling idiot, John Fetterman, not only not supporting a ceasefire, but in many ways cheering on the mass slaughter of Palestinians. It's disgusting when you see, for example, like centrist liberals who denied the reality of what life is like in America in the service to defeat a Bernie Sanders presidential campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it that, right? It's
Right.
disgusting to sit here and talk about how things are all fine and dandy in this country. The medical system works. Oh, we just need some tweaks, right? But there's something about this that is just so fucking clear, that we are seeing what is happening in Gaza right now. And there are people who are spending their times not only bending over backwards to deny the atrocities, but actually to try to lay more of a foundation, to shore up the foundation, to protect the foundation for these things to continue. It is the height of an extreme inhumanity that we have to defeat completely.
Yeah. What else is there to be said?
No, and I mean, this graphic, for people who are listening, I think really.
Yeah, I'll spell it out. It's the Independent, one of the newspapers I actually enjoyed picking up when I was a fact checker in London a decade ago. It's left of center. Middle East, who backs immediate ceasefire? Yes, on the yes side, tons and tons of flags. On the right side, Israel, America, and Britain.